very much. Um, so you've heard John has talked about the anti-dumping laws. Sarah's talked about the CVD laws. Commerce has to make the decision as to whether or not dumping or subsidies are taking place. But it's up to the ITC to decide whether or not the cases are going to result in relief. And so let me explain how that works. When you file a trade case with the ITC and the DOC, the first thing that happens is that within 45 days of the filing, the ITC has to make a decision as to whether or not you have shown that there is a reasonable indication of material injury due to the imports. So if you don't make that showing, that's the end of the case. Do not pass go, do not go on to the Department of Commerce. That's the end of everything. So all cases that are brought have to sort of get over that initial hurdle of showing that you have enough evidence to show that there is, material injury. Then the case goes over to the DOC and they do the investigations that you've been hearing about from John and Sarah. And once the Department of Commerce has determined whether there is unfair trade, then the case goes back to the ITC for a final decision as to whether or not the unfairly traded imports have either caused material injury to the domestic industry or whether those imports threaten the industry with material injury. And if they do, then the commission votes in the affirmative and the order goes in place. Cases are often hotly contested at the ITC. This is, an area where it's often challenging in order to show the evidence of unfair trade. One of the things that your constituents may sometimes complain about is that under the AD/CVD laws, they can't get relief until they've suffered material injury. But that is the law. That is the way the law has been designed. So you have to show, or at least you have to at least have been threatened with material injury. So normally what people are trying to do in these situations is they're trying to decide, okay, have I suffered enough that now I can convince the ITC that I've suffered material injury by reason of unfair trade. So when people come and talk to you about these things, injury is something that you're going to want to focus on. The ITC wants to see evidence that the unfairly imports have taken market share, that the unfairly traded imports have undersold the domestic industry or forced the domestic industry to lower its own prices, that the unfairly traded imports have caused the domestic industry to suffer a lower operating income, or maybe lay people off, or not have not make expansions or investments that they wanted to make. These are all potential forms of injury. The statute is pretty broad in terms of defining injury. It can take a lot of different forms, but you do have to show a connection between the import levels and a poorer performance on behalf of your industry. It's critical to understand you don't necessarily have to go down. You could suffer material injury in a rising market if your performance improved somewhat, but you would have done even better if it hadn't been for unfair trade. That was an issue that the Congress clarified about 7 or 8 years ago in terms of clarifying the laws. Now, what about the International Trade Commission? It's a unique body. It was begun by Congress back in around the 1920s as the U.S. Tariff Commission, and was originally designed to give Congress expert advice on the tariffs. This is back in the time when Congress used to basically write the tariff laws themselves, similar to the way they write the tax code now. And so the Tariff Commission was created to give Congress advice on kind of what the tariffs should look like. Over time, that mission changed. They became the U.S. International Trade Commission. They have 6 commissioners who are appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. They normally are supposed to serve 9-year terms, with each term expiring. In other words, every 18 months, one of those terms will expire. But if a commissioner, if their term expires, they can stay on past the time of the expiration until the Senate has confirmed their replacement. Or on the other hand, commissioners can retire and leave the commission before their term has expired. So right now, we have 4 members on the commission. By a matter of law, no party is supposed to hold more than 3 seats on the commission. So we have David Johansen, who's the chairman of the commission, is a Republican from Texas. He's actually been on the commission since 2011. His term originally expired back in 2018, but he has never been replaced. So he continues to serve, and he's now the chairman of the commission. Rhonda Schmidtlein is another commissioner. She is a Democrat from Missouri. She was confirmed by the Senate in 2014. Her term expired December 16, 2021. Again, nobody has ever been nominated to replace her, so she's still on the commission. Jason Kearns is a former Hill staffer who used to work on the Ways and Means Committee. He was sworn in as a member of the commission in April of 2018. His term is set to expire in December of 2024. And then finally, we have Amy Carpel. She's a commissioner. She's a Democrat. So Johansen is a Republican, and then the other 3 commissioners are all Democrats. Amy Carpel was confirmed by the Senate in August of 2019, and her term expired a few months ago in June. So as you can see, we have 2 vacancies, and we have 3 of the 4 commissioners have stayed on beyond the time in which their term expired. So a couple of things for you guys to be aware of. One, you may hear from constituents about, potential nominees to the commission, or the importance of having good people on the commission who will be committed to enforcing the trade laws. Another thing that you may hear about are, a lot of times members are asked, will you help us with our trade case? Will you testify before the ITC? Will you send in a letter to the ITC? It's very, very common for members to testify before the ITC or send in letters to the ITC. It's not, and you guys will probably get requests to do so. If you do, I think the commission is always interested in hearing from members of Congress and takes what members have to say, very, very seriously. I'm trying to make sure that we stay on time here. I just wanted to address a few other quick issues. The commission, because of its old role as the Tariff Commission, they continue to play a fact-finding role for the Congress. They are not only, voting on these trade cases is not the only thing they do. So, for example, they recently issued a big report on the significance of the 232 and 301 tariffs that you've heard so much about. They did hearings. They conducted an investigation into the economic effects of those tariffs, and they put that report out. And for any of you who are really interested in, what was the effect of the 301 tariffs? What was the effect of the 232 tariffs? You can get that from the ITC and sort of see their analysis, which is quite detailed. The other thing that you should be aware of is that the commission is always looking to sort of upgrade and improve its investigation of cases. One of the big issues for them is, how do you determine, how much capacity a domestic producer has? So, for example, if I'm a domestic producer or a foreign producer, if I'm operating at a low level of capacity utilization, that could be significant. It could mean that I'm being injured. It could mean that if I'm a foreign producer, I can ship more goods. But how do we calculate capacity? And what the ITC has been doing recently is making sure that people report their capacity in at least 2 different ways. One being kind of your installed capacity. In other words, this is what it would look like in a perfect world in terms of how much you could make. And then another is more your practical capacity. In other words, with the workers and everybody that you have in place right now, what could you do? And so I just give you that as an example of kind of the way the commission works. They're very interested in drilling down and getting into the facts and getting into the specifics of a case, because they're always looking to see if they can find that linkage between the unfairly traded imports and any harm that happened to the domestic industry. So that's a brief overview of the ITC, both in terms of their role in the process, the personnel of the ITC, some of the recent issues that have come before the ITC, and some of the ways where your constituents might ask you to interact with the ITC. So, Mark, happy to take any questions, or not, whatever you prefer.
Well, Stephen, let me pose the following question to you, okay? It says, once a duty order is in place, how long does it typically take for it to benefit the company and affected communities? And do companies usually reinvest those benefits into the industry, workers, and in what way is that accomplished?
Yeah, so I would say in the first place, I mean, normally when a company is trying to decide whether or not to bring an AD/CVD case, what it means as a practical matter is that somebody, probably in one of your districts is basically sitting there thinking, okay, I'm really losing business to imports. What do I do? I could bring this trade case and fight this case in DC, and if I win that, maybe I'm able to stay in business, or I can get out of the business, right? I can sell the business, I can move the business, I can basically just let the business go and let the imports have it. That's usually the type of choice that they're looking at. So the type of people who bring these cases, and you guys will probably all have a chance to meet them because you probably all got constituents who are going to be interested in this sort of thing. They're fighters. They want to save those jobs. They want to save that community. They don't like the idea of unfair trade coming in and wiping out their businesses. So the answer to the second question is, yeah, we see a lot of situations where, people invest and reinvest in these industries. I mean, obviously, probably is, steel is one of the industries that brings the most cases. I mean, roughly 80% of all the steel sold and consumed in the U.S. is still made here in the U.S. And that's true because for decades, steel producers have taken the benefits of the cases and used that to reinvest. So I think the answer to that second question is clearly yes. In terms of the first question, it really varies in terms of how quickly you're going to start to see benefits. In some markets where the players are all very sophisticated and nobody wants to get hit by anti-dumping duties, you'll start to see a very rapid response. But in almost every case, once the Department of Commerce has made a preliminary determination, which is usually about 5 to 7 months out, and people start having to post cash deposits in order to cover future imports, you'll normally start to see the imports go away, and that's when the petitioner will start to see the benefits of the case.